The Maroon White Pod brought to you by Citylink. For bookings, timetables, updates and any other information, head to citylink.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon White Pod. That was another special weekend for Galway football where we have advanced into the All-Ireland final where we defeated Donegal 114 to 15 points. I'm joined this evening by Dave Morris and Eddie Hoare, and it's probably going to be hard for us three Galway men to contain the excitement levels, but we do have Eamon Donoghue too to maybe just calm us down a notch if we need to this evening. But Eddie, coming to you first, before we get into any of this game, as I said there in the intro, it was just a really special weekend in Croke Park, even the full-time whistle, with there being such a huge Galway crowd in Croke Park on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely, Paul. A massive occasion for all involved in Galway and the N17 Blair, and it was a really great occasion. But one thing I did take from it was while the fans were excited and the players in a way, but there was a containment amongst the group as well in terms of they had a job to do on Saturday and Sunday, and it's nearly like as if compared, let's say, with Saturday with Armagh, there was that sort of controlled excitement I felt amongst the group, which hopefully bodes well for 2 weeks' time. But definitely in terms of Croke Park, the atmosphere on Sunday was electric. 67,000 people in Croke Park for an All Ireland semi final. It's the way Croke Park should be, with lots of people there and lots of excitement and lots of colour. And it was a really, really good spectacle and lived up to the expectation.
And David, even before we analyse any of this, even as Eddie mentions it was just really special to see that colour at the end.
Just an amazing. It was a privilege to be there, wasn't it? And it's why we love our games the way we do. And when the Saw Doctors played at the end of that game, and the beauty about Croke Park is probably a bit, sometimes the final, it's harder to get tickets, but the people that want to be there could be there the last day. And, I was in an area with so many families and just the joy on everyone's faces. And afterwards, it really was a privilege to be there. It was a cauldron of sport. Fair play to Donegal. They travelled in huge numbers as well. They made the game. Were very gracious afterwards. But it was definitely a privilege to be there.
For us supporters, Eamon, it's hard to control the excitement, I suppose, when you are in the last two now.
Yeah. I think it was just great to see, like you obviously seen over the years that kind of scene since Croke Park have started playing, the music at the final whistle, and like to see Galway footballers it was actually nice to see beforehand the tribute to John O'Mahony, and then to see the scenes in 2001 when they're celebrating, and then at the end to kind of see that kind of joy which we haven't seen in a long time kind of in Croke Park for Galway footballers. Like, so it did, I don't know, it felt like a bit of symmetry between the two in a kind of a nice way. So but yeah, like I think as well for the players, this is their second crack at it now for most of them, and so there's kind of is a bit more control and expectancy rather than knowing what's to come, which isn't there for Armagh. And then I also think that like I think Dublin and Kerry not being there, and them knowing that, like, kind of even for the fans, they can smell it on All Ireland. Really, it's not like just getting to a final. Like, where I think Armagh were celebrating, they obviously see a chance as well, but Armagh still were celebrating the achievement of getting to a final. Where I think Galway really have can get a sense of or a feel of the Sam Maguire already.
That's the thing, Eddie. When I know we were talking off air, the first time since 2010 you don't have a Dublin, Kerry and a Mayo as a final. Obviously, the management and the players don't think of any of that, but just for supporters, it's hard not to already, I suppose, start picturing Sam Maguire. But that's, I suppose, for us to do as supporters.
Yeah, even hearing Eamon say Sam Maguire and it's that close, it nearly put a shiver down your spine, because as a player or former player, it's all that you ever wanted. Growing up, you watched year till Sunday and repeat, repeat, repeat. That's all you wanted to do, and the lads have such a great opportunity to win Sam Maguire in 2 weeks' time. And I think, yes, definitely, I fully agree in terms of the fact that Kerry and Dublin, if Kerry were in the final, we'd be probably thinking, hard beat Kerry in a final. We wouldn't be favourites. Not that it stands for much, but just that definitely from a supporter's perspective, the excitement levels are definitely starting to rise, and it's because there's going to be a new name on Sam Maguire, first time for 20 years or more than 20 years, which is, it's great for the sport as well, but it's great for the two teams involved and a great opportunity for both sets of teams.
Is the biggest positive, Eddie, out of Galway's performance? So many of the front runners that we usually rely on for big performances to get us over the line, it was maybe the other players that just stepped up and grabbed this on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you think your inside line, Robert Finnerty, yes, he scored a few points, but there's definitely more in him. Damien was really well marshalled. They had their homework done on him. Shane was probably not at full tilt, but there's so much more in that inside line. And analysing the game last week, or in the build up, I'd said if we could get enough ball inside, but the lads really out the pitch grafted so well. John Maher was outstanding in the second half. The platform that Dylan McHugh and Liam Still gave us from the half back line, again, it's just a team that seems to have various different ways of winning, and that's a really, really good thing, because you couldn't have probably said that about us a few years ago. We probably were lacking that little bit of depth. We were reliant on, be it the semi-final, Damien playing well, Shane playing well in the final. One of them really had to click, whereas last Sunday neither of them did really to their potential, and they'd both say that themselves, and I think that bodes really, really well. And the big positive to take from it is that there is so much more in there that we know is there, and hopefully will come out.
David, I know last time you're on the pod, your own club man again, Dylan McHugh. The levels this man is going to this year, is it surprising you in any way, the level he's got to this year? I just think you're on mute there, David.
Probably not in ways. I think Dylan's such a great leader. I think what has happened with Dylan is last year he was hampered by injury and he's been progressing, and this year he's had to stand up. He's had no choice, because that half back line has been missing Liam, been missing John Daly for a while, so he's kind of become the mainstay, particularly on the right flank. I think he played on the left flank again. Monaghan didn't suit him as much, but so many guys stand up, and as Eddie said, I think the beauty of the team now is, if guys don't stand up, they're going to get whipped off, and guys are going to be coming on that are chomping at the bit. So, we spoke last time, said there's 25 players there that are eligible, for real inter-county level. And Dylan is certainly performing. I just saw today he's favoured to be player of the year, but that won't be in his head at all. He'll just do what it takes, both from a defensive perspective, because I think he intercepts more foot passes than anyone else. He's probably gone the top assister, and the last day he started contributing more on the score sheet as well. So he's in a great vein of form. But there's a lot of lads in a great vein of form as well, which is really, really positive. And to think that we were worried about that Donegal half back line coming into the game of Ryan McHugh, Padder Morgan, Owen Baughan Gallagher, and then to see our boys pop up with 4 points out of 6 shots, it's just it's incredible.
Is it frightening in one way, though, when you mention he's favoured to be footballer of the year? He went from that, I think it was when he played Kilcoo in the All-Ireland final, he was a sub that day, he came on. To go from that level to now footballer of the year is like, that's monumental, the level that he's risen in such a short space of time, when you even consider that.
Oh yeah, and then Dylan was dropped for 2 Connacht Club finals, and to hear him speak about that, but attitude trumps all else. And the one thing you'll never hear anyone say a bad word about Dylan McHugh, and you'll certainly see people respect him for his attitude, both his personal attitude in terms of his physical well-being and how prepped he will be. He's a lot of work done, but how he contributes to that team as well. And for any young kids that listen to the pod, he's the definition of it. As an under 12, 14, you wouldn't have picked out Dylan, and he just started to get better. And if you look at the physique of Dylan McHugh versus maybe 6 years ago, I would say he's one of the fittest and potentially one of the fastest players. Don't remember down Sligo against Armagh when he had those line breaks. He just took on everyone and beat them. He wouldn't have done that a couple of years ago. So he's kept at it to his game. That, with his skill set that he always had, he was always a really skillful footballer. But you need the physique. And to be honest, the most thing you need is the attitude and the mental resilience to make a county player. And he has those.
He really is a player now, Eamon, that's in the running for footballer of the year, and rightly so.
Yeah. Well, like, the thing about that is a lot of lads get kind of runs in county squads, and some lads, can be consistently picked for years. But like, I always kind of give the example of, like, at the very top end of that, like of Brian Fenton, but like players who can improve every year. It's not every player with that opportunity will constantly improve, and like physically he's improved. Like confidence wise, he's improved. Taking on responsibility, he's improved. And then he's just away. Like you'd imagine next year he'll be even better than he is this year, and like that's a great sign of a player. And it's less common than like you don't see it as regularly as you'd imagine with that opportunity. You would think that everyone would, but it's not the case. I think as well the way the Galway play at the moment, they play like through their backs have so much possession, like so there's sort of their backs kind of are getting more ball than any of their forwards. So like they have an opportunity to kind of really stand out, and I suppose that element that he brings in the foot passing from Carafin, like that element to his style of play, it really kind of gives a nice balance to the half back line. So yeah, he's been fantastic. He was brilliant the last day, and yeah, across the whole half back line, there is that nice balance. And I think Sean McKern's, like at first when John Daly wasn't kind of in it, I thought that was a mad decision. But Sean McKern's brings a really nice balance in the other flank. They're very different players. And that's the nice thing about that Galway team in general. I think Joyce does that well. A few tweaks to it than what was there in the All-Ireland final 2 years ago. There's a very nice balance to the team. And again, that's something which a lot of teams don't look at in the modern game, because there's kind of all-out attack, all-out defense. Everyone kind of is a similar enough player. Where Galway do have a nice balance, and McHugh's role is crucial.
Eamon, what impressed you most about Galway on Sunday?
Funny to say that, like when the star players kind of, or the marquee players didn't kind of carry the team. I actually think that like it was clear that they're carrying knocks. I actually think the shift that the marquee players put in was so mature. Like Damien Comer, like a few balls in the corner, like the effort to like for the ball to stick, to secure it, to recycle it. Like the maturity throughout the whole team was just really, really, they were in control of the game. They were really mature, and you've seen that from the leaders down. And so even though they weren't kind of the standout star performers, I still think they were the ones who kind of led, but through maturity rather than 2 years ago where it was just kind of individualism really that was kind of bringing that team through. And you've seen that with Kerry there, like individualism can be put out, but like that. And also I just think that True Mulcairns, Maher, Keane Darcy, like these lads, like they're just a great workman, like that it's really, and the fitness levels, and people are talking about Donegal's fitness levels, like in terms of their speed and up and down, but them lads put in a massive shshift, and they cover serious ground for players who obviously aren't at 100%. So yeah, I would just say that kind of the mentality of Galway really more so than anything else, and twinned with the maturity, like.
Just on the first half, Eddie, before we got that goal, there was stages in that first half where supporters around Croke Park, Galway supporters, were getting concerned. Like that goal was massive in the context of things.
It was, yeah, and there was, I suppose, a frustration among the supporters. But to be fair to the team, they seemed to stay and Eamon touched on it. There was that maturity and a patience to sort of work the angle, work it across, draw out the blanket or the defence, and they seemed to be confident in the way in which they wanted to break down this Donegal team, and ultimately they did in the second half. But yes, in the first half there was elements. It was quite, compared with maybe the Dublin game, it was a little bit lateral, but it had to be lateral. They had to draw them out, and they were patient. And while we did have a few drop shorts and were a little bit frustrated with some of our decisions, ultimately in the end it came good for them, and it was that patience and belief in the process that they would break them down. They had the squad to be able to win this game over 70 minutes. It didn't have to be won in the first half. Years ago, you'd see us going up to Croke Park having pot shots and missing, and it was just more mature performance last Sunday. And the performance, they knew they had the players, they had the squad to be able to break down that Donegal side. They did, albeit we'll all acknowledge that the goal was fortuitous. Matthew Tierney did play a great. His run was brilliant actually across the way. I know the defender was Paul watched a little bit, but Tierney did his movement, a full forward standing up, Patton would have just picked it into his chest. He actually was moving, so he did play a big part in it, albeit it was very fortuitous, and Paul Conroy acknowledged that. But at the time, just go back to your question, we did need the goal because Donegal were picking off scores. Michael Langan was getting scores from range. The Donegal fans were getting loud, so it did come at a good time. But to be fair to Donegal, they responded very well to it, and straight up, I think, after the next attack, and McBurty nailed a really good score from the Cusack stand side. But definitely, yeah, it was a little bit slower than other games to get going.
At this level too, Eddie, there was even supporters getting frustrated maybe that we weren't pushing out in Donegal, but like that's easier said than done when you mentioned Michael Langan there and even Oisin Gallen in the first half. Like it's hard to get out there quickly and I suppose get the contact on them when they've Langan and Gallen have such quality.
Yeah, at that elite level, it's about percentages, and Dave Morris would know more than anyone in terms of the percentages. And it's the high percentage shots is in around the D, and Galway were protecting the D. And albeit, yeah, they'd acknowledged they didn't get out to some of the shots, but they were being scored, but they were low percentage shots. They were nailing them, yeah. But you see in the second half, Langan had a pop. Another few, they were maybe a little bit tired, Gallen as well, and they weren't going away. But Galway kept their plan of protecting that scoring zone, and in the end, it reaped the rewards. Donegal kicked a lot of wides towards the end, albeit again at the start, Galway didn't go away from that plan as such in the first half when they were going over. They again stuck to the process, which was encouraging, and it just seems to be a real belief amongst the group in terms of what they're doing. I know Cian O'Neill has been pivotal in terms of the defensive structure, and any team he's been involved with will speak so highly of him, and it's you can see it there.
On that point, David, in the first half, did you feel we were struggling getting out to Donegal, or is that with the quality Donegal have?
Yeah, I was quite worried at that time actually, for the simple reason that it just felt easier for Donegal to score. And looking at, we kept 3 up, which is pretty unusual in modern day football to keep 3 up. So we facilitated a 12v12 or 11v11 if you count the keeper, and we were happy to have that. And it did mean that the likes of Ryan McHugh, etc. So what that did is we weren't able to cover the full back line as much. And when Donegal went at us, they could easily pop it out and they had shooters within range. And I think they got 7 scores from playing 1 free from just those pockets outside the D. Now, there were some scores, as Eddie said, just Stephen O'Mara's numbers would say that, on average, they should have scored 8 points. They got 10, and each score was nearly a 50-50 shot. That was the distance and that was the pressure. But they were getting pressure on our shots and we weren't getting as much pressure on theirs. So the goal gave us a bit of a cushion. They brought it, when 3 up, they brought it back to. So I was a bit worried at half time, particularly the ease at which Donegal could. We were giving them the kick out and they could go up and get a score. Nearly every time, I think it was like 14 phases out of 17 that they were getting shots off. So it was very few turnovers in that game. I think only 12 in total. So that was probably a really efficient first half from Donegal. And I thought there was a marked change in Galway. And I think that was at half time. I heard a few comments after the game. And if you look at some of the way Galway defenders pushed out way more aggressively to stop those shooters outside the D. Donegal finished the second half with 3 points from play and 1 free outside of the D. That's half. So they really cut off that supply, and Galway just mopped up everything inside the D all throughout the game. Donegal couldn't get in there whatsoever. I think they only got a couple of scores there. So I was worried at half time, but credit to Galway. They were brave enough to go with 3 up top. Donegal didn't, brought everyone back. And they were fatigued at the end of the game probably for doing that. So I don't know, was that a plan by Galway or was it just our guys weren't able to get back? But there was a much better defensive performance in the second half.
That's a great point about the edge of the D, David, because Galway just seemed to have such a belief defending on that edge of the D. That obviously takes a huge amount of discipline in modern Gaelic football. But why do you think they are so impressive at that at the minute?
I just think they have a great understanding because they don't have a set +1. You'll see Mulcairns back there, you'll see Dylan McHugh back there, you'll see them handing over. And that's really down to the training field and the level of communication and the level of trust that they have there. And they have a very, very hard-working team. Some of the names that we mentioned there, whether it's Maher, and if he hits, He's hitting Keane Darcy. They're physical and aggressive, and they don't switch off. I think, was it 3 frees that they gave away yesterday in total? And Donegal scored 2 out of 3 of those. So the level of discipline and communication that's in, I won't say the defence, but the whole team to make that work, because even Shane came back quite a bit in that second half, and they were tagging the Donegal kickers. So those Donegal lads were not going to get shots away easy, and they ended up pushing their shooting zone and changing their shooters. Had Mogans and Darrow O'Brien shooting, the cornerback shooting, versus the Thompsons and the Langans. You don't want them shooting, and that'll stand to them well against Armagh, because some teams have long range shooters, and they're the lads you need to tag in those spaces.
Was it the thing for Donegal, Eamon, they probably did play the better football for periods of that first half, and then to not go in ahead of the break?
Well, them shooting percentages, obviously there's 50-50 shots there that they're nailing. I think that's an element of their game throughout the league and championship, as in like they do shoot from the periphery of the shooting zone a lot, and they are very accurate from that, and they have been very accurate throughout the year, particularly so in that game. I don't think they were a far better team or anything like that in the first half. I think it was, I don't think there's much between the teams. I think that, and Tomás O'Shea kind of reflected on that in the RT studio on the fact that Galway were getting their scores from kickouts, and then in the second half there was a period where Donegal stopped pushing up as high on the kickout. But I actually think that was a mistake in a way, in terms of that it gave Galway possession, and like Galway are really economical, and then backs are very good on the ball, and then Galway were able to find a way into the. So even though the way in the first half Galway were hurting Donegal most was through the long kick out, when they were able to get possession through a short kick out, it gave them more possession to control the game. Where before that they were doing well off that, but it was their only sense of getting the ball, and there was no sense of control with that. It was just chance score, where Donegal had more control of it. So I think that gave and I also think that Donegal's press was aggressive, but I don't think they set traps for Galway. Like Gleeson kind of looked up, he didn't really see an obvious short, and then he just went long, or if it was an obvious short, he went short. So I think the kickout had played a big role in the second half in the way that it went, especially early on. It brought Galway back in and gave them a sense of control, where in the first half they pushed up high, Galway had to go long, Galway were getting scores from that direct football. It was great, but Donegal then were getting the short kick out. So Donegal obviously had more possession. It was kind of possession is control. So that's how I kind of seen it roll out in the first half. And then when Galway put more pressure on Donegal, obviously a slight chance of a goal risk by pushing out that bit more, but that never materialized. And them chances from the edge of the periphery, there was more pressure on, so that they weren't going over as much, or they weren't getting the shots away. I think taking off McBrearty as well was kind of a bit of a question. You wouldn't be questioning too any McGuinness's decisions, but it was, he was a shooter on the edge of periphery who was gone as well. But no, I don't think first half they dominated or anything like that. I just think that they were really, really efficient.
Just someone's kick out, you mentioned Conor Gleeson's. Obviously he's going short when it's on, but when it's not on, he's going long. And I think it's refreshing to see, in one sense, that this Galway long kick out is having such success rate, because I suppose we've all been listening to probably punditry for years, and there's been so much made out of the short kick out that Galway are just, it's nearly old school in one sense, but they have the monsters of the men to kick it out there.
Yeah. And I think Gleeson, like the short kick out can kind of, sometimes he can get caught with a short kick out, but with his long kick out, he obviously has massive distance, but he has also improved in terms of like he's able to disguise where he's going a bit more now. And I think that like Jason McGee's just come back from injury. He's kind of been the dominant player in the air in this championship, and like they kept the ball away from him. And then Galway have so many options, they're big men across the half forward line and midfield. So like why wouldn't they go long? And as long as they kind of can create overloads, they should create. But as I said, then if teams want to push up, Galway can go long and create an overload. And if teams then are afraid of that overload and they drop numbers back, you give possession to Galway's backs, who are really, really good on the ball. So like it's a kind of a no-brainer with Galway. I think though, in terms of you've seen the two teams who kind of punished them in this year's championship are the two teams who are best at pushing up, which is Armagh and Mayo. And because they set traps, they don't just press; they set traps and they'll kind of lure you into lure Gleeson into, and not just with the kickouts, but also in coming out, building out from defence. So yeah, I think it'd be a bit more of a challenge with that. But like, it's when you have five big men out in the middle of the field, like Galway have, and other lads to come on as well, and Damien Comer to come out. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you go along? Like,
It is old school, Eddie, in one way, but it's just great to see.
It is. It's like traditional football, but to be fair to Pádraig Joyce, he's been very loyal to Conor Gleeson, and one of the big attributes for Gleeson is, yeah, he's a good shot stopper, but his kick out is a big thing. And Eamon touched on it. His kick out has improved. He's able to disguise it, and it's equally as long, but it's more directed. There's better trajectory on it than before. So he definitely is working on it, and there seemed to be a little bit more accurate as well. So from watching the Sunday game, you could just see he's able to find them pockets. I was just surprised with Donegal how, I don't know whether they were ball watching or what it was, but they Galway seemed to be able to pick off them pockets, and it, like was touched on, it makes it a lot easier when you have such a big presence around the pitch, and the half hour line, like they're all ball winners. McDade midfield with his club, he's with midfield 2 years ago with Galway, he was outstanding. Obviously Maher has had the season of his life. He always had that in him, and Matthew Tierney as well. So that gives such a great option. But they seem to be just working together. Matthew, lovely breakdown at one point, or was it Paul Conroy to Matthew in the first half? It was like rehearsed. So they are working really, really well on kickouts. Cian O'Neill again is obviously playing a big role in that. But it's great to see, and it shows that the management have great confidence in the players to be able to put the ball out there and win it. And they're gaining more possession around the middle quarter, and with the inside line that we have, if you win your midfield battle or the middle eight, it gives you a great platform to beat any team in the country. And so far so good this year.
Statistically, we're getting a big return from it this year, David. It's safe to say.
Yeah, the long kick out is really working. Not just what we score off it, but because we don't concede. The numbers the last day were just off the charts. It was 14 long kickouts, 113, scored 5 points, conceded nothing. It's pretty phenomenal. And that's been Galway's year, you know, apart from the Armagh game with 1-2, they've been so steady off that kick out. And do agree with Eddie. Paul Conroy as a target man, with all of the others coming out, but he's been exceptional how smart he is. I'd say he's won more frees and given more breaks rather than catch it clean, but he's been phenomenal out there this year as a target. And the fact that they're not conceding on them, you know, Galway are 2 points up. Conor Gleeson had it. Galway went back into this cluster formation the last day against Armagh. Last few minutes, and the whole let's not let this happen again. What happened against Armagh? We found a man, won the kick out, went down the field. So it's really been working well, and it's becoming the new trend now. I would say on the opposite side, Galway have a bit of work to do defending short kickouts. Armagh got on very well against them yesterday, and 12 points out of Donegal's 15 came from Donegal short kickouts. So that's 80% of their scores coming from kickouts. Normally that's much less. So as Eamon said, I think Galway can get better at setting some of those traps, because they're probably going to give Armagh some of that kick out as well, particularly off play. So that's an area of concern, but their own kick out they'll be quite happy with, knowing, as Eamon said, Armagh scored 1-2 off opposition kickouts against Kerry the last day, and they will be targeting Conor Gleeson again. So it's going to be ratcheted up. And they will be much more organised than Donegal were. I would say Donegal were not happy with their kick-out press on Sunday.
Is that from the numbers being there, but then we're nearly kind of half pressing the opposition kick-out, but we have the numbers forward? Or do you think we're fully kind of dropping off too deep at stages from the opposition kick-outs?
Yeah, look, most keepers now are getting off, 80% even when pressed. But Galway's press it's half a man-to-man, it's half a zonal. They're not committing any wing backs up into the spaces like someone like a Dublin or a Mayo would be. So they're just not really aggressive, and they're happy enough for a team to win it short. The main thing they don't want is what Galway did the last day, is a guy winning it in space in the middle of the field. That's where the real damage is happening. So Galway want to stop that at all costs. But yeah, their press is not. It was really good, and maybe it's the fact that they just don't really need to do it. You know, the last day it really suited to back off the Donegal kick out, because if Donegal win it long, we know how good they were against Derry. And also by backing off, you're then not giving Ryan McHugh, Heather Mogan's, Owen Bone Gallagher's these one-on-ones where they can go and drive at you. So the last day it really suited to back off, and I don't think they were really concerned about, you know, very high presses. They would have been if they went behind in the game.
That's something though to bang the drum with this Galway team for the next week and a bit, Eamon.
Yeah, well, in terms of pressing on the short kick out, I think in particular Donegal, obviously it's a weapon of theirs, like the scores that they create from their own long kick out and the knock on, the punch on. So they weren't kind of giving any oxygen to that, or like I suppose it's a conservative approach, but like who knows what Jim McGuinness had up his sleeve around kickouts, which Galway just didn't give them an opportunity to do because they just gave it to them. Also your full forward line probably weren't in shape to, like the two lads carrying injuries, to press up. And as Dave said there, like I don't think that they really see the need to as well, in terms of it's not really in their. They probably need to get to a stage where they can do it on occasion. Like, you know, if they score a free, they should have a strong press after a free, or like there should be moments in the game when they need to press that they can do it really well, or if they're trailing, you know, they can. Where at the moment in that game we didn't. I suppose there wasn't a necessity to do that, but yeah, there'll be times where they need to mix and match with it. I think that, as I said, on the flip side of it, I think Armagh caught them for 1-2. I think Mayo like should have banged 1-1 against them on kick out time in the Connacht final. Just didn't go for it. Kind of the way that their inside line is, but and I think that's by setting the trap. So I just think kind of hammering down, continuing to improve as they have done throughout the championship in their own restarts. One of the things I think that was like on reflection, that I don't know what the lads think with this, but I was very surprised by the decision to put or to keep. He obviously had an amazing game overall, but for Liam Silk to be on Oisin Gallen, I was surprised that Paul McGrath wasn't put on him. Like I don't know what he scored from play in the end, you know, but he was on fire, and like that's a matchup that, you know, McGrath I think would have been well suited for. And I don't know, Dave obviously knows it much better than I do, but like in my eyes, kind of there's a big difference between kind of tracking your likes of your Jim Connolly's or these guys kind of around the field and kind of almost putting them on the back foot and having that read and kind of standing corner back and marking as a corner back. And like McGrath's, like Silk is an amazing man marker, but I like going back and doing that
just
job.
on that, sorry, Eamon. It just seems to be what they're doing though at the minute, because it was the same against Dublin. Silk went to full back, Fitzgerald went to 6. It seems to be that Silk, well, since the Dublin game is the go-to man, that they're putting the faith in at the minute.
Yeah, and look, he's shown that over the year, and he kind of would have been in previous years, a lot of teams maybe standout players were in half forward lines. You know, he's obviously very good at it. Like it's very hard to stop these forwards when they kind of get hot. Gallen got a couple of scores in a row, but I don't know. I just thought myself that McGrath would have been a better fit in there in the corner for that man marking. Bit different now in terms of Armagh's inside guys are a bit better ball winners, where again still it comes into it. But that was one that I just thought, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what Dave thinks of that, in terms of, just in my mind, I think there's a difference between tracker. I don't know if I'm getting the word right with that, but I'd always think of like a tracker and a man marker. It's like when Lee Keegan got put back on Con O'Callaghan a couple of times and he got rinsed in the corner, where like, you know, if he's out wing back, he can put them on the back foot a lot more. You know, he was able to hold pretty much anyone he came up against. That's just my kind of thought on it in terms of looking forward.
Are you surprised with that, David, that they have went with Silk back in to full back in the last 2 games?
Yeah, I was. We don't know the reasons for that. Like Gallen hit was a 3 out of 6 in total. He was definitely fatigued at the end of the game. So whether that was the plan to put him on the back foot and to really get him chasing Liam, there's probably no one, you know, no one's able to chase Liam, just the ability he had, and he really took the game by the scruff of the neck. I thought what was really interesting is if Liam was on Gallen, then I'd probably expect McGrath and McBearty, but that didn't happen. So it was just kind of funny in terms of those matchups. Now, McBrearty was hot, but Jack still did a good job on him. But yeah, those matchups, it'll be very interesting to see what they're thinking, because I think Johnny, is having an absolutely amazing year. I think Turbot caused him a few problems, but Turbot is going to cause everyone problems. We saw the way he moved the last day. He's just an exceptional player. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup, and I don't think anyone could predict it right yet. I think there's the feeling I get from management is, in terms of being able to move and having the strength, as Eamon said, Liam is the man marking guy. But Johnny's been trusted on so many as well, and then you've Jack to come in. It wouldn't really bother me. I think they'll rotate a bit as well. I don't think it'll be a direct matchup, and they rotated a bit on some of those matchups the last day as well, because that's the confidence and communication they have.
Just on the second half, the difference, Eddie, it was interesting to hear Shane Walsh talk after the game, and he was praising the effort that the backs put in. Obviously, Donegal did only score 5 out of the 14 shots in the second half. Now, that's obviously down to maybe a bit of inaccuracy, but the pressure the Galway backs put them on, like as David mentioned earlier, there was a huge difference in that in the second half.
There definitely was, and there was a marked difference, like Dave touched on, and obviously it was discussed, and it was something that they weren't happy about. But again, it was going back to the trust in the process that they did protect it. I think Galway as well, more of a maturity in their performance. They were there to get to a final, I think, and like Pádraig touched on, semi-finals are there for winning. I would say Donegal, if you spoke to them at the start of the year, getting promoted to Division 1, winning an Ulster title, they were probably well in bonus territory, getting an All-Ireland semi-final. Galway there was maturity, and they picked off their scores in the second half. Donegal, on the other hand, they'll be disappointed. There was chances there. There was a few key moments. The pick up off the ground was while some felt it was incorrect, I think by the rules it was a foul, and again Ushing Gallant's miss on it's a very, again, he was probably tired, I'd say tired legs, but they left a lot out there. But in terms of Galway, Jim McGuinness made 3 changes beforehand as well, and no more than Desi Farrell in the quarterfinal probably shuffled the pack and maybe went with what he felt was his best team, whereas Pádraig had the faith. Obviously Kelly couldn't play and didn't feature at all, but I think we had more reserves at our disposal in the bench, and I know they weren't as prevalent the last day, but just Donegal just didn't seem to have that, I suppose, depth in their squad. When Paddy McBrearty came off, I was surprised. Eamon said it as well, and it was discussed after. I was surprised he came off because he was a typical guy in the pocket. But again, it's other lads stepping up to the plate. Shane and Damien will have more in them, definitely in the next day. But Liam Silk was outstanding second half. John Maher got his score, but the amount of work, the assists, Dylan McHugh the exact same, and they just seemed to grow into the second half and just took it to Donegal and put them on the back foot, and they just, I suppose, nearly did a Donegal, an old Donegal style. They literally led from the half-back line, whereas Ryan McHugh and Morgan, they were well tagged, they were well looked after, and they didn't have that influence on the game, whereas our guys did.
Yeah, the big difference there from the 41st minute, Galway won the rest of the second half 5-2.
Yeah, and Donegal probably, again, like I said, missed a lot of chances. Will be disappointed with that. But Galway, and the scores were coming from different players. It wasn't like Shane shot the lights out and scored 5 points. It was, I think, Maher picked off one, Liam Silk picked off one, Killy McDade kicked one early in the second half. We got the free from Finnerty as well. So there's a nice spread of scores as well, which was important. But that said, the game could have gone anyway, and Donegal will come away from it. And you could see from Jim McGuinness afterwards, he was disappointed. He knew there was an opportunity there, but equally, if Galway had left it behind, they'd be really, really disappointed. But just the way the game played out, it was always going to be tactical. It was always going to be a score here or there in it, and just thankfully it was Galway who were ahead at the end.
Yeah, level on 10 occasions when you consider that. With that, Eamon, after the match, Galway supporters are obviously on a real buzz, but even being in the pubs in Dublin after the game, the crack was flowing and everything, but there was a real appreciation for John Maher.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like, and again, it's great to see someone like that being appreciated for the work as well as like, because obviously he's coming forward now, like over, like if you think of the kind of breakout game he had in the kind of championship last year, getting forward and, catching a ball or even, kicking a point or creating a goal or having a goal chance, but he's being appreciated for kind of that graft that he's doing, which is great. He's so, I think there was one hand pass that kind of just went off. I don't know if you'd blame it on him or the guy who wasn't expecting it, but he's so efficient in possession. He doesn't give ball away. He's all over the field. His fitness levels are through the roof. To look at him playing against him a few years ago, his whole body shape has completely changed. He was such a big, bulkier guy. He's still very strong and physical, but he's flying around the field. And I think the modern game in that role just really suits him. I think Darcy goes into that as well, because the two of them were kind of around Galway panel, similar kind of around the panel playing, maybe FED League or earlier parts of the year, maybe in and out for a league game and not really doing much. And the two of them just are both in fantastic shape. They bring so much to that Galway team, and kind of both of them keeping the likes of Maher's midfield there, but keeping the likes of Johnny Heaney out from the starting 15, who again, can come in and do that role. I think that them between them three, what they offer in that engine room, like Darcy was able to empty himself and then Heaney could come on, and that's kind of the dream. You kind of managers always saying that, even at club level, go out and empty yourself and then lad will come in. He literally went out. It was like a horse running around the field, and then Heaney comes in and does the same. But Maher's having a great year. He's in all-star territory. But he's going to have another kind of big test in the next game. It'd be interesting if O'Neill starts midfield. Would he be kind of designated to pick up Rian O'Neill and track him? Be interesting. I suppose O'Neill kind of switching in and out between the half forward line now more than the Ulster Championship, but that would be an interesting matchup if he is on him, and I think he'd do really well in that role.
Just on the finish, because we were obviously level with Donegal, David, 112 to 15 points, and then we get the 2 points at the end to win it. Obviously in 98 and 2001 we've seen great finishes, but over the last 2 decades, maybe we haven't seen a finish like that where we've kicked the last 1 or 2 scores to win a game.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying in terms, but I think the way football has gone and the way Galway's gone, it's like two heavyweights gone at it. They're just firing shots at each other, and it's really in the last 5-10 minutes when Galway are going to pull clear. Similar enough to the Dublin game. Before that, similar enough the way they snatched. Galway have just finished exceptionally strong, and whether that's by design or not, but I think great credit has to go to the management for the way they're working this. There's subs here in terms of subs. There's subs that you need to make and subs that you want to make. But Galway seem to want to make a lot of these changes. Okay, a couple of guys went off against Dublin that you didn't want, but the ability to bring on Heaney, as Eamon said, that's huge. To bring on a guy of that experience and that caliber late in the game. And all of the subs they're bringing on are really contributing and really adding to the game. So, when I look back at that, and, it was one of the best defensive displays from Galway in that second half, only conceding 5 points. Donegal were on the ball 17 times. It was just phenomenal. But a lot of it was down to fatigue, where Galway were finishing with nearly a stronger team. And some of the guys that were staying on are just in superb conditioning that will go on forever. So I really think that was a key difference, that Donegal were just that they need another year to be playing at those levels, where Galway now are coming in as a seasoned and battle-hardened team. And they're showing that coming to the end of games, because football now is getting a bit like basketball. You go toe-to-toe for 55, 60 minutes, it's going to be level around then, and then it's made the best team win, whether it's your set plays, but you get your best players on the ball to finish the game. And Galway certainly did that again.
Yeah, that finish was obviously impressive, but as David mentions there, Eddie, the subs making an impact. Even at one stage, Daniel O'Flaherty was under severe pressure, was able to keep the ball, keep his composure in the corner.
Yeah, definitely, and it's the depth, and probably used our bench more against Dublin. We got more out of them score-wise, but when you think that beforehand, if you said, let's say, take for example this time last year, Porrick forced his hand. He played Sean Kelly because he maybe didn't have that trust in his bench to be able to replace Sean Kelly against Mayo, and ultimately lost that game. Whereas last Sunday we were able to bring in Keane Darcy and knew he'd come in and do a job, and he's again put in a shift, and again I'm sure he'll again have more in his ability to perform if he's playing or starting next Sunday week. But again, we were able to put him in, and I touched on it a few times. I remember in 2022 when we were doing some of the podcasts, and one of the guys I had sympathy for was John Maher, and I often mentioned that he's the type of guy, I'd say he just was unlucky not to get into the squad in 2022, when he was the type of guy that you knew he was, you'd have a certain cohort of lads that feel they should be in there, and they felt that they were disappointed not to be in there. And I think he was one of them, and I'd say trained really, really hard that winter. John O'Mahony came in with Salt Hill, and he was probably one of the players of the championship and the club championship, and came back into the Galway squad, and deservedly so. And he hasn't looked back since. And he's probably the type of player that we were probably missing in 2022 when the Spillans came on for Kerry and kicked on. We, let's say, had some of our players were getting tired, and we didn't have that depth in our squad. If we had a John Maher back then in the form he is in now, it would have given us such an impetus. Keane Darcy again. So definitely, yeah, we have that depth in the squad, and each of the subs seem to know their roles. Like Daniel O'Flaherty again, really abrasive, tenacious, quick at getting up the pitch, breaking. Like, who wants to see Daniel O'Flaherty coming on when you're flagging at 65 minutes? He's great speed. He can get up. He can kick a score off both feet. Same with Kieran Malloy, seasoned player, club and county level. And he only came in injury time, but again came in and won a vital possession, and was there to do his job. Tomo as well didn't go well for him against Armagh. Was it Armagh? Yeah, didn't play against Monaghan, but was ready when called upon against Dublin. And same the last day, probably didn't get as many minutes as he would have liked, but was still very much bought into the process. And they seem like a very tight, united group. You don't hear, maybe I'm away from it more than I was, but you certainly don't hear much soundings from the four walls of the camp, which is always a good thing. Like going down into Croke Park, maybe the lads might say differently, but I hadn't heard. I thought maybe Sean Kelly mightn't play. That was my own thought because of his ankle and that, but it certainly wasn't being speculated about. It seems very tight and confined, and it's a united camp, which is always good to see.
I don't think we're going to hear anything about Sean Kelly for the next 2 weeks anyways. That's going to be kept fairly quiet, I'd imagine. Just on this, Eamon, is this nearly not dreamland stuff, but it's a good position now for the Galway management to be in. You have all these players who are making an impact. They don't want to be the finishers, but that's the role they're playing at the minute. If Sean Kelly comes back fit, he's eager to get back into that team, and anyone on this starting 15 doesn't want to give the jersey away.
Yeah. If you look at the different sport, obviously, if you look at the Harry Kane conversation and him for England, and how he was, not fully fit, and they were starting him in games and taking him off. Like, I'd be looking at if Sean Kelly's able to give you 15, 20 minutes coming on, even if you think in the Connacht final when he wasn't fully moving, the couple of interceptions, like the interception with Mayo coming out and a crucial turnover, win a free, like he'll provide massive moments, and him coming into the mix, I think, is crucial. There's clearly competition there. There's clearly like really high standards, and I think just not only for this final, which obviously is is everything for these next 2 weeks, but like looking forward for the development of this squad, and for Galway football, like it's really good, because you have a situation where you've like Daniel O'Flaherty and these really talented Galway underage players. As a county like Galway, you're producing so many talented players, are coming into a game, into a setup and a squad where there's a job for them to do, a role for them to do. They come in, they do it. They'll do it really well because they're really good players. And suddenly you've got a really strong squad to select from, which just becomes contagious. Whereas in the past, you would have had situations where you have good, talented young players who are coming in, and you're almost desperate and expecting them to do something. And then, that's not the environment that you want. And then suddenly lads don't develop on their talent. And like, there's really good Galway players there, not even on the match day squad. Like, so you'd imagine there's huge competition. Like, imagine being a Cillian O'Curry or something like that, who's like what he's probably doing to try and get onto that squad. So that's
there has to be a certain degree of devastation as well for Keane Hernan when you see how well he played against Dublin and breaks the wrist 3 or 4 days out from an All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, after coming back in from missing, yeah, and like obviously Joyce has a lot of faith in him, and particularly in that defensive role. So yeah, but like look, they have a really strong squad. Like you look at the additional names that are in there, and they're really good players. Like, and it's just the way it can change obviously all year. They still have massive injury issues, but like the beginning of the year when they were completely, their squad was stretched to the limit, and now like they're in a really good place with it. So, and that's what you're going to need. You're going to need finishers coming on. I think Armagh have been really strong at using their bench. Been really strong even in terms of they've had experience of that now over the last like 2 years of extra time, and taking lads off, bringing lads back on. They've seen that with Turbot the last day, and they've done that with him before. In a tight game, they kind of know how to use that bench really well. Down the wire, and Galway will have to do the same. But I think Galway the last day used the bench really, really well, and even in hindsight, taking off Walsh and Comer and them was needed for the tactical element of that game, but it also should hopefully mean that that wouldn't have that their exertions in that game hasn't had an impact on them too much for what they can do in a final.
You presume this week, probably, David, it's probably the last week, maybe at the weekend, where they get maybe their final A versus B game, but there's going to be a lot of lads hungry, even the lads on the extended, to try and make this 26 for an All-Ireland.
Yeah, there's lots at stake. The great documentary about the team in '98. I remember that comment. There's lads trying to get on the panel, then there's lads trying to get on the 26, trying to get on the extended, trying to get on the subs, and trying to get a game. So yeah, there's lots of competition there. But the ego will be put aside here. What's best for the team, and that seems to be. I'll go back to Eddie's comment that's a tight knit group, and I think people can see it. We can see it after the games. And it's not like their manager is lovey-dovey or putting the arm around them all the time. He's calling it as he is, but there's a lot of respect there. And that's the way we want it. We want that honesty, and people can see that, and that's why they've so much support now going to the games. Never saw a big crowd following them in the All-Ireland semi-final. So yeah, there's something special about this group. Whether they'll do it or not, we don't know in the final. We all hope they will. But the days they've given us this year and how proud they make us all as Galway people is brilliant. It's a privilege, as I said before, and they do have that bond, and you can feel it and you can see it.
Do you think Sean Kelly could make the final?
I have no idea, and there's so much that goes into these decisions. Where if Sean Kelly will make the final or not, would he play for 70 minutes? Do we want to start him? Because that means if he gets injured after 20, we'll have to take him on. That's one of our subs used, and heads could drop. A lot of decisions have to go into that, and they'll be with the Fáinne Walsh and the S&C and the whole lot trying to do that. And they'll also be looking where do you play him? Is there a good position in terms of matchups? Who goes on who? And go back to John Maher, they've put a huge amount of faith in John Maher, because Killian McDade was nearly Player of the Year as midfielder beside Paul Conroy. But they now obviously see this as a better fit, where they've put someone that's a bit more defensively minded and freed up Killian to do that bit more of the attacking role. So they have some huge decisions to make on matchups, and glad we're not in there. Glad it's them boys, because they've really steered us in the right direction, and we just trust them to make those calls the next day, whether it's the starting team, but there's also now these finishers. And the likes of Johnny Heaney, as Eamon said, like, what a brilliant talent, but is now probably in an Ireland final, has to get his head right for 20-25 minutes. And that's brilliant for us, because the quality that we're finishing up with is exceptional. And hopefully it's the same again next time.
A nice, easy question, Eddie, that came in from one of the followers of the pod, Craig Lundy. Ahead of the All-Ireland final, who do you believe has the better bench, Galway or Armagh? You're just on mute there, Eddie.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, in terms of benches, I think Armagh have a strong bench as well. Like any team that has the likes of Charlie Oak Burns coming in, Young O'Neill as well, they're really, really strong. They have a lot of dimension. I'd rate Armagh higher than Donegal. I think they have more depth. They again have a better bench. I would have said early in the year, I felt they were a team that I thought could go really, really well. But I'll go back to it again in terms of Galway, the bench. I think we have that little bit more depth. we've more rounded depth in terms of being able to bring on defenders, midfielders, and forwards. I think Armagh have probably more depth in their forwards. Maybe they're middle eight. Not more depth. They've more options on their side. They don't have very little options on their defence. Whereas I touched on there, Daniel O'Flaherty, Kieran Malloy. We haven't even mentioned very little John Daly and All-Star. We've depth in our midfield, be it whether Sean Kelly starts or not. Keane Darcy, John Mahart floating around there, Johnny Heaney, and the same up top. We've lots of depth in various different spaces. So again, to answer the question, I think I'd be saying us here in Galway, I think we have that little bit more depth and more rounded depth at our disposal all over the pitch on our bench.
Just finally, before we finish, lads, we're obviously going in as slight favourites to win the All-Ireland now, which is strange. It's probably something that's never happened from a Galway situation first. But to get the outside perspective first, Eamon, well, I hope you're going to say Galway are going to win, Sam, but why do you feel Galway will win, Sam, if that's what you do feel?
It's a hard one to I kind of feel that like with these, you kind of get a bit more of a sense of it as you're coming closer to it, and obviously you can kind of look forward where you're kind of still looking back on Donegal game to kind of really put the head in the block and make a prediction with it. I honestly, and I kind of alluded to this on the podcast I was on last with you, which was during the All Ireland's series group stages. Like Galway with fully fit team are as good as anyone in the country. Like that, they're the team that I would have been seeing as pushing Dublin and then probably around the same as Kerry. And they obviously beat in Dublin. So like if you just look at it on the face of it and you kind of take emotion away and you look at it, like they've a better team overall. They've beaten Dublin. If they can get enough fit bodies on the field, like they should win it. Like we said it kind of without putting head on the line, because having to look at kind of matchups and kind of really kind of dig into how you kind of see things going, that would be crucial to it. But like and sometimes that's the best way of looking at it, is just kind of taking a step back and looking at those clear things. Like there's no doubt that Galway have the better footballers, and even when you talk about like on the bench, Armagh have a really good bench, really good players to come on, but like Galway's full of, like, I think Kieran Donoghue was talking about Kieran McGeeney after the game, what a great job he's done with Armagh with like such limited underage success. Like Galway have so much talented players coming through in comparison. So like yeah, I think that there's, if you're making an argument for why they should win it, they've beaten Dublin, the better players. Simple as, like, so you can make an argument for Armagh as well, but that's the one for Galway.
Why do you feel they'll win it, Eddie?
I think, again, in terms of the development of the side, I think they'll take a lot from 2022, having lost that final. I think they're Armagh, you could see the euphoria last Saturday. I would say they weren't in All-Ireland final mode, or maybe are now, but when Galway, when they won, they knew they were there to win, to get to a final. And I just think it's that mindset amongst the group. They won't be phased by the build-up the next 2 weeks. They'll have primarily, 99% of them have done it 2 years ago, and they've that taste of defeat. And I think that'll stand to them if it's a tight game, which I expect it will be. Again, I think the Croke Park pitch, it'll suit Galway as well. I think that this team seemed to play well in Croke Park. We were a much better team as well against Armagh earlier in the year. We should have won that game, bar the few hours towards the end that the game turned around. We were very much in control of that. I think if Galway perform and Armagh perform to their ability, Galway should win the game. And that's what I'd say. And it's up to Galway to get that performance out. And I have full faith and belief that they will. But going back to Armagh again, like I touched on, I've said they're a good side. They are a good side. And I think they'll have a big say, be it next Sunday or going forward. But I'm sure it may just be that little bit less down the road than this Galway side are. but I'd be confident that hopefully we can do it, and the Sunday week will be Galway's. Sean Kelly, in terms of whether he'll play or not, I know you asked. I would like to. I think he, again, we don't know, but if you asked me before last week, I would have said they might have just given him an extra 2 weeks to give him that chance to give literally 4 weeks from the Dublin game, and they've done that now. So if he's at all fit at all, I think they will play him, and he'd be such a big addition. And I'm sure Kieran McGeaney and Kieran Donoghue wouldn't like to see Sean Kelly lining out. But on the balance of it, I'm going to go with a Galway win.
Do you agree with all that, David?
Yeah, I do. I like the positive. I don't look. I wouldn't go and predict a Galway win, because I think these games are so close. Even the bookmakers, like, it's virtually 50-50 in terms of the game, because what Armagh can bring. I do think the teams have an awful lot of familiarity with each other, and that always leads to tighter games, because they start nullifying. They'll know each other down to the wire. They won't really need to look at the date on this one. They just know each other so well. So will they give Dylan McHugh that freedom? You know, how are they going to attack Galway? What are they going to do with Turbot? All of these things, there's going to be so much talk in the backroom teams planning their scenarios. So familiarity will bring a closeness to the game. Galway are going to probably give out the opposition kick out. They're going to give Armagh the ball, and they're going to trust their defence and trust their counter. What they don't want to happen is they don't want to concede a goal. Armagh don't concede goals. Galway don't either. So they'll want to keep that one. They don't want to go behind to Armagh, because then you're playing a different game where you have to press out and chase. That's not our strength. But if Galway can be level or ahead, then they're going to be in a great position, particularly in the finishing line, because, as Eddie said, they've been there already. They've had the hurt from 2 years ago, and some people say you might have to lose one to win one, and take those learnings and take that hurt. But this, has potential to be a very tight game. I do think, there's a couple of things that Galway go after in Armagh. And if they get those right, then they'll be in a really good spot. But you don't want to fall behind to a team like Armagh, who know how to win, can set up defensively, and good kick-out press as well. I think they've only conceded something like 3 goals all year when I looked at the data. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot more in this game. And thankfully for us as supporters, we can sit back and enjoy the build-up, but the players have to be on their best behaviour and really get all the homework done, get themselves in great nick, and be up there in Sunday week and give it socks.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive 2 weeks ahead. Huge excitement for Galway supporters. But that is all we do have time for on tonight's pod. Thanks to David, Eddie, and Eamon for coming on.